So my name is Kathy Wollenberg, and the title of the book is Far Less, and you can purchase it on Amazon, and you can access it on the HSU press website as well. I've lived in Humboldt since 1982 when I came up to go to university here and majored in geology, but I, much later, about 15 years ago, joined a writers group, and because I took a couple of writing courses down at College of the Redwoods, and a few of us formed a writing group after that, and two of us have been in that group ever since, and so that's how I got back into writing. Well, maybe into writing.
What was the big kind of catalyst for you moving into writing from geology?
Well, I had stopped working kind of in that field of geology for a while and been doing a lot of volunteering at my kids' elementary school and high school, and helped start a local charter school, and I'd just been really involved in all of that. So I'd kind of been out of the geology world and was in this writers group, and writing was something I could fit in, while I was in my van waiting for the kids to finish tennis or their plays, or, while I was doing some of this volunteering. It was just something I could fit in and something I've always really loved to do since I was very, maybe in, I don't know, 4th grade, I started doing a lot of writing. So it's something I've always wanted to do, but found the time during that.
What would you say was the inception of your recent book here that you did in collaboration with HSU Press?
So when my daughter was in 8th grade, she did her 8th grade project on helping the homeless in Humboldt County. And for a couple of years before that even, she had been making these really tiny, intricate paper crane earrings and selling them around town, and using the money to buy food for homeless dogs. And then she started kind of adding in food for the people, and when she was in 8th grade, she went down to interview Betty Chin in Eureka about what she does, and Betty told her about her whole day, which was amazing. That particular day, Betty said at the end of the day she was going to be giving this boy who was turning 16 his first sleeping bag of his own. And she pulled the sleeping bag out of the back of her truck and showed it to us, and it was this beautiful kind of compact backpacking style sleeping bag. And I just got this, I don't know, feeling about this boy, and I was curious about what his life must be like, and I really just kept thinking about it, and that's what inspired this story. And I didn't start writing it for a couple of years after that, but that was the inspiration. And that's all I really know about this boy. The rest is fiction.
What would you say is the biggest, what kind of message or impact do you want the book to have on its readers?
Well, homelessness, it's a big issue in Humboldt County and, all over the country. But I think the issue of teen homelessness, because teens really make an effort to keep their circumstances hidden. They're really trying to blend in. And this is something I kind of saw, but also heard a lot about from my daughter's mentor back at that time, Maureen Chase. So I had that in mind, and that's a big kind of piece of this story, that Jesse, the protagonist, is trying to keep his circumstances hidden from his peers. And so I guess I hope that the book sheds light on the fact that we may not see them, but there are, homeless kids, a lot of homeless teenagers who are in fact trying to keep us from seeing their situation.
How much do you think Humboldt County as a region played into the creation of your book?
Well, I guess because we do see so many homeless people around, Humboldt, that probably played a big part of it. But I mean, I could have seen there are homeless people everywhere. But I think also the redwood forest is kind of a big character in the story, and So that's another piece. My kids did a lot of tree climbing when they were young, so I spent a lot of time kind of watching them monkey around in the trees, and that my son in particular, that kind of parkour style tree climbing that Jesse, the character protagonist, does, was really inspired by watching them climb around the trees.
Yeah. What was your collaborative process like with HSU Press? How was that experience for you?
Really positive. You know, Kyle and Amanda and Sarah have all been, and there are others I probably don't know who've taken a part in it, but really gracious and patient and easy to work with. So this is my first publishing experience, and it's been really, really positive. So I think also because some of the book itself takes place in the HSU library, it's kind of a fun fit, and some of the story takes place on the HSU campus, and then also because it's a story about a homeless teenager. I like the fact that not only does HSU Press make the book available on Amazon, but they make it available for free on their website, and I like that, you know, anyone who can get access to a computer could get access to this story.
Definitely. Did you write this for any specific person in mind as you're going through the stories? Like thinking about the original boy who Jesse was inspired by. Was there anything that you wanted the audience to really understand at a core level after reading your book?
I hope that after reading the book, the reader would, you know, within their own community, wherever that is, just look around a little more, be a little more observant, maybe have more compassion and empathy and tenderness towards homeless people in general. But even though they're hard to distinguish, just to know that homeless teens are out there and to see, you know, what they can do in their own community. That would be my wish.
After going through this creative process, what do you have in store next as a writer? Has this kind of led you to any more creative stories or outlets or projects that you want to pursue in the future?
I am working on something, but it doesn't take place in Humboldt County. It takes place in Nevada, actually, out in the Basin and Range. It's another story I've kind of had on my mind for a long time. It's not about anyone homeless, but I do think that the commonality, kind of the thread, is that there's a lot of the story takes place out, you know, outside and being a part of the elements. So maybe that's a common thread between the two stories, and maybe other shorter stories that I've written as well. I think that's something that I like to incorporate in my writing.
So you'd say you'd like to explore kind of life outside of the urban sphere, outside of cities?
Yes. I'm not a big city gal. But,
yeah.
I mean, I can appreciate cities.
I'm the same way.
But I might not, understand them well enough to write about them. Or maybe I just don't want to spend too much time in that environment, even in my head.
Definitely, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. How do you normally come about, you know, being inspired? Like when you find an idea, how do you come to, is it something that's really spontaneous, that you find something that just clicks, or are you the type of person that'll have a routine where you'll sit down at a certain time every day and say, I'm going to write this much, and then something will come to you during that process?
I don't have much of a routine. I wish I had more of a routine. I just started a new job, so now I have even less of a routine. But I think that I do kind of wait for that inspiration, and then once I have an idea, then I can kind of sit down at any point. And I think with this story in particular, it really worked well to just be kind of away from home and in my car in a theater watching the kids get ready for the play. Or yeah, I think I do kind of need that inspiration from somewhere just for the story, like the story about, far less about Jesse. We really did just kind of come in, not all at once, but started with that sleeping bag and hearing about the boy, and then it just kind of sifted in over time. And I think that's what's happening with the story I'm working on now. I think short stories, though, they seem like they come in full blown a little bit more for me. But, yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything else that, or actually, can you give just a brief story synopsis for anyone who might be watching, who might be interested but don't know anything about the book?
Yeah. So essentially, it's a coming-of-age story about Jesse, a homeless boy who's 17 and living in the community forest behind Humboldt State here with his drug-addicted mom and his 7-year-old sister. And it's kind of just about what happens to him, but there's also this aspect that he's really reluctant, or more than reluctant. He just does not want his peers to discover his circumstances. So he goes out of his way, to take showers and not smell like wood smoke, or he does his laundry as often as possible. He's trying to keep his little sister clean. He's trying to keep his mom off of drugs. He's got a lot to deal with. And he's trying to go to school. So, and he's got girlfriends. He's like a typical teenager in some ways, but in a lot of ways he's really struggling to survive. And then he also has this love for the forest and tree climbing, and that's kind of his refuge, where he can really get away from all of this stuff that's beating him up on the ground.
How much of the personal connection to that story do you think comes from being a mother and having kids and seeing them growing up?
I think a lot. I think my kids kind of sift into this story. There are a lot of aspects of my kids in some of the characters. But I also feel like it's, it's definitely a fictional story. I've never been homeless, and I've never been a drug addict, or so there's a lot that I don't know about, and I'm, making it up. But I hope it's realistic enough for people to kind of feel like they're in Jesse's world and able to get a sense of what he might be going through. And that's kind of what I tried to do writing it, was just think about, okay, this kid's living outside in the forest. What's going to happen? And how's he going to get through this day? And how's he going to deal with this mom and this little sister and this girl at school and these kids who might figure out who he is? And how's he going to find some joy in his life, and that gets him up, climbing up the trees. So, but yeah, I do think that my kids are really my inspiration for most things, so they're in there.
Awesome. Now, is there anything else that's on your mind that you really want anyone viewing this to know about your book or about the process?
Anything else? Let's see. I mean, I think just what I said before. I just hope that reading this book just enables the reader to just look around a little more and have more compassion and tenderness towards homeless people in general, and know that there are teenagers out there who need their help if there's any way they can help them.